Masters of innovation.
Looking towards the future with anticipation, raising up the technological conversation from the east to the west and all across the nation. If knowledge is the cure, then we got the medication. We're the masters of innovation, the masters of innovation. We're the masters of innovation, the masters of innovation.
Welcome to the Masters of Innovation. We're back with that cutting edge knowledge you need to combat COVID-19 inside your firm, your organization, wherever you're at. I'm Garrett Wagner, your Entrepreneurial CPA channel host, and I'm joined by the man with a master's in cybersecurity law, the man that's written more books than I care to count or keep track of. And we can't find him, so we're going to move on past that. Back again, Joe Brunsman. Joe, how you doing today?
Good. Actually, I found my books.
It took you a long time to find those, huh?
Oh, it's on my stack of, you'll see, Understanding Insurance Law, Cybersecurity Law, ABA Cybersecurity Handbook, Administrative Procedure and Practice. That's a page turner.
God, Joe, all those books
Real
sound
page turner.
terribly, terribly boring.
Oh, they are, 100%. Never buy any of them. Never.
So, Joe, I thought today we're gonna bust it out. Last time we had some fun. We're gonna get a little more serious this time. All right? And I want to know from you 10 things that we should know as practitioners about cyber insurance to help us be ready with COVID-19, with the rise in insurance claims, a rise in issues and problems, the knowledge we need to know to stay on top of it every day. We don't need to don't pull the books out, don't get too in depth, but high level 10 things we need to know to be ready.
Okay. So I'm going to go with probably, I might change it a little bit and say 10 things that people should know, but they don't. So the first one would be, I go all around the country, well, not now, I'm doing a ton of webinars around the country digitally, but I go all around the country speaking, at large groups, talking about cyber insurance and cybersecurity law. And I always stop by the booths, right, on my way to get coffee. And I always make it a point to talk to the cybersecurity vendors to try and see what it is that they're trying to sell people. So I hide my name tag and I go in. Really the point of that is I think people should know is there is no silver bullet to cybersecurity. So no matter what a vendor tells you, right, there's kind of like the pie that is cybersecurity. And there's different ways you can cut that pie, and you can add different pieces together in different quantities, et cetera. But there's no silver bullet to cybersecurity, no matter what they tell you. So it really comes down to defense in depth and trying to defend all the endpoints that you have. What that really means is you got to spend more money than you probably want to on cybersecurity.
So a couple key points there. Key point one, just for the audience, everybody knows, I have seen Joe go up to vendors' booths and do that. And I can tell you, you don't want to be the guy in the booth when Joe's coming to ask you questions, pretending he doesn't know that he hasn't written books on this. So it's always kind of amusing to listen to as they kind of fumble through responses and he tries to hide his depth of knowledge. Two, as we talked before, I think this is really important right now for firms to be ready for this depth of defense and covering your endpoints. As we talked before, as you scatter and go remote, that's more important than ever.
100%. So, if you think back to, probably the best analogy is if you go back to the 90s and you had a bunch of computers, right? People sitting at workstations with their big CRT monitors. You had a local area network, you had an internet, and you knew what people had. People weren't bringing in smartphones, they weren't bringing in tablets. They weren't trying to access your network from thousands of miles away. People sure as hell were working from home in the 90s. That was almost unheard of. So now you've got, just hundreds of endpoints scattered across the country. And a lot of businesses, shockingly, really have no idea what their security posture is right now. So previously, we kind of understood, okay, Karen has this computer, she's at this workstation, she transfers files on this, on her PC or her business provided laptop, and that's it. But now it's Karen has her home PC, which we have no control over. Who knows if she even has a password? And maybe she's transferring sensitive information over her home Wi-Fi network. Well, what's the most common password? Password. And the next most common password. password 123. So it's really exponentially increased the danger to a business in the cybersecurity world.
And Joe, that's one of the things I love. I love guessing people's passwords and having me surprised you figure it out. And just kind of go through like the top 5 common passwords. Like you said, password 1, password 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Like just going through those, and people are like, "How do you know my password? Like, what do you mean?" And you're like, "Well, it was really hard. Like, I mean, I tried password all lowercase, and I tried password with an uppercase P and a 1 on the end. And what do you know? I'm in Joe's computer, and I just played around.
And you're in.
I'm in.
And you're in.
All right. So, Joe, what are the tips? What are the things that people should know but don't about cyber?
Next point I'll kind of talk about is, I always get this question, and I wish everybody knew it. If you buy some vendor's product, some cybersecurity vendor product, that does not mean that you get a discount on your cyber insurance. So just because you buy an incident detection and prevention system does not mean that your cyber premium is going to go way down. It's already kind of written into the underwriting guidelines anyways, but anything you're going to pay for is probably going to be more expensive than your actual cyber policy itself, unless you're a very, very large company, in which case you probably are already doing all that stuff anyways.
All right. So to put that in more like normal people's terms, if I'm a CPA firm, what you're saying is if I buy additional antivirus, malware, firewall, DMZ, access points, whatever it is, that's not going to change my premium.
Probably not. It may change it a little bit. I mean, we're talking like percentage points, but you're not going to see some huge like 50% decrease. And the reason behind that is, and this is kind of just a thing, we don't actually know what works. Like I can't tell you, I can't quantify that if you get a firewall, that it's going to lower your risk of getting, you know, a ransomware event by 20%. Like, you know, that kind of fidelity just doesn't exist. And so if we can't quantify it in the insurance world, it doesn't exist.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. What else you got for us?
State laws. I wish more people knew this. So
wait, hold on. You wish more people knew that states had laws, or that, where are you going with that?
That the states' data security and privacy laws, so that includes the breach notification laws, they're all different. And the ones that apply to you, it's not just the state where your business resides. It depends on where your clients are residents of. So for example, if you have Massachusetts clients and you're dealing with PII, PHI, or PCI, now you're looking at 201 CMR 17. And I won't bore you with details on what that means, but it's super extensive. There's a whole list of requirements of things you're supposed to do there. So if you just think like you could be a business in Florida, you have one client who's a Massachusetts resident that you do business with, and let's say you have their social security number. Now you are technically supposed to be adhering to this Massachusetts law, which is pages and pages of requirements. Then extrapolate that across the country and figure out, okay, what residents do we have for all of these clients? I mean, you could be looking at potentially having to adhere to dozens of cyber and privacy laws. And people just, they don't know that.
Yeah, so Joe, so I did some digging on this as preparation for this. And so at our firm, we're a relatively small firm. We've got clients in 22 different states. So to your point, we've got 22 different states that we need to understand and comply with their various privacy laws. Because, we've got name, date of birth, social. There's no way around it with that. Pretty much every state, if you've got their name, date of birth, and social, you fall under that category. Some states are a little different, but yeah, I agree with that. I hear from a lot of practitioners. So I don't have to worry about Mass in California or New York. Like I'm not in there. Well, do you have a client that's there? Oh yeah, I got at least one client that's in one of those 3 states. Guess what? You've got to apply that to everything and everybody. Okay. That's a big one.
Exactly. And those laws change all the time. So I do my damnedest to try and keep up with the major changes in the various state and federal laws and their different interpretations, but they're always changing. So it is really, it behooves any company to actually just start that relationship with a data security and privacy law attorney to make sure that they're staying up to speed with all the laws and changes that could apply to them.
Or Joe, that's why I keep you on it as one of my friends and on speed dial.
Sure. Well, I mean, you can always call me, but
So I call
people
Joe
listening
and say,
to
hey,
us,
Joe, like, make sure I'm, help me be covered in all these different states. Because there's a lot to stay on top of. And thank God you enjoy looking at this stuff.
oh yeah, I really nerd out on this, but not very many people do.
Yes, if you couldn't tell, Joe truly does. When the cameras are off, Joe is just as nerdy about this. All right, what else? What else you got? Let's keep the list going. We're rocking, we're rolling.
All right. Federal laws. Federal laws apply to damn near every business out there. So the big kind of cyber cop of the United States, I guess de facto, as it were, is the Federal Trade Commission.
Mhm.
The FTC has gone after big companies, small companies, defunct companies, individuals. They've gone after car dealerships. They've gone after healthcare providers. They've gone after the Twitters and the Facebooks. They can go after just about anybody they want. And if you try to fight them, they will bankrupt your company. So there's one really famous case. It's actually being litigated right now. I think it's the 11th Circuit, but I have to double check that. And it's LabMD. And this guy, long story short, he spent the better part of $800,000 bankrupting his company while trying to cooperate with the FTC. So if the FTC comes after you, you are in for a very, very difficult time. Moral of the story there is federal laws apply to you. It's either, FTC Section 5, or we're talking about Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, or FERPA, or HIPAA High Tech, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure you know what those laws say and do your damnedest to try and adhere to some sort of reasonable interpretation of what those entities would ask for.
And that's important. Most CPA firms don't kind of realize that all those FTC laws pretty much apply to us. It's not something we like to talk about, but we fall into that category.
Yeah, actually, there's I believe it's IRS Revenue Procedure 2007-40, where they actually say that a violation of the FTC Safeguards Rule, and anybody listening to this who doesn't know what the FTC Safeguards Rule is, I would urge you to please just quick internet search and figure out what that is, or buy my book, available on Amazon. But nonetheless, if you are caught in violation of the FTC Safeguards Rule, the IRS can actually revoke your e-file access, which I'm not a CPA, but I would just imagine that if my e-file access got revoked, that would probably make it slightly difficult to do any sort of tax return work.
Yes, that would be a huge problem. And then getting a new eFin is not something you'd be doing like overnight. So yeah, we definitely don't want to lose the ability to e-file. All right, there's some good tips here, Joe. What else you got for us as we go through 10 things you should know but don't?
I would say next is cyber insurance is dirt cheap, and it is really complicated. So when you think about cyber insurance is not a legal term. It's actually not even an insurance term. It's just this idea that society has come up with that if something goes wrong with the pixies and the wires, that somehow there's insurance for that. And that's just not true whatsoever. So depending upon how that intrusion happened, what happened after the intrusion, how the whole fact pattern plays out, that could be a professional liability claim, that could be covered under your crime policy, that could be covered under the, quote unquote, cyber policy. It just depends. Some of these claims are just not insurable. So, it's like, we can do the best we can, but you can't have insurance for everything. And you may not have enough insurance. So you really kind of want to default to, and this may sound weird coming from the cyber insurance guy, but defense in depth, right? Cyber insurance is the last answer that you want to go to. So we have this kind of famous saying in the insurance world that insurance is the one product that both the buyer and the seller hope that they never have to use. And that really is true. That should kind of be like a guiding principle for a lot of firms out there. And I think they're relying too heavily on their cyber insurance policy. And they may find out that either A, don't have the coverage, B, it's some novel interpretation of that coverage. C, the fact pattern doesn't match what that insurance is designed for. D, it actually should be covered somewhere else. So, just make sure you understand what that cyber policy says. Most insurance guys, I hate to say it, they're not really savvy on what this product is or what it can do. So just kind of for the average business owner, the 80-20 of all of this is before you sign that dotted line, cyber insurance policy, it is a contract. Make sure you fill out the application correctly and read the definitions inside the policy that you actually understand what it is you're getting, because it just depends.
And you're right. It is super complicated. It's something it's cheap enough. You want to have it. We've saying this. It's not like you want to not have cyber insurance. But yeah, to your point, don't assume that your cyber insurance is going to make up for bad behavior or lack of training. Now, Joe, I do have to ask you, something you said that just really caught my ears as I was listening to you talk about it. You mentioned pixies and wires. What are pixies? If you could explain to me, it might be one of your books, what a pixie and wire is.
Oh, so that's how electronics work. So the pixies come out of the wall, they dance through the wires, and that's how lights work.
Okay, like a pixie is in a fairy.
You kind of the same thing.
Like Tinkerbell.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so the internet works on fairies and wires.
Those are elves.
Oh, okay, elves. Okay.
It's a subtle but distinct difference.
I was not aware of that, so thank you, Joe. So is that the last of the 10 tips, or you got a couple more left?
Probably the last thing I would add here is the importance of employee training. So, for example, I think Google just came out and said that Gmail is blocking somewhere around about 18 million coronavirus scam-related emails per day. And also, if my memory serves me correctly, Gmail, I think at some point had said that they were 99.5% effective at blocking malicious emails coming into a business. So, 0.5% of 18 million, that's still a big number. So at the end of the day, there's all these technical solutions we can put in place. And I really nerd out on that stuff and I find it super fascinating. But at the end of the day, it's the end user has to be trained. Well, for one, it's actually probably a legal requirement under the FTC. But two, on a practical note, it's that end user needs to be able to understand, okay, if I see something that looks weird, how do I deal with that? What are the rules my firm has on transferring SIM data? A lot of times, like those of us in leadership positions, we just assume that people know things, and that's where we really get in trouble, right? As we start making those assumptions, and we're like, how did you not know that you were not supposed to do X, Y, Z? And that person goes, well, you never told me, right? And then us as leaders, we're like, well, it's common sense. Why would you transfer a bunch of social security numbers over like a Starbucks Wi-Fi network? That's obviously not secure. You can't just assume that people are going to understand and know. Pile on top of that all the stress and everything else going on in the world right now, the probability of an error is just way too high. So employee training, definitely need to make sure that that's on the top of your bucket list there. And then probably the next layer below that, this is somewhat new, but it's called deep web monitoring. So you can actually sign up for services where anytime your username or your email address and a password is linked together, and that's found in kind of one of these shady underground websites, you can actually get notified immediately on, if that information is out there for sale. Why is that actually really cool? Well, for most states, they have something called a risk of harm analysis. So let's say you've got that instantaneous notification and somebody goes, you get an email and it's, hey, Karen's email address and password is now up for sale. So you call the IT guy, you're like, hey, shut that down right now, right? You revoke access. The password has to be changed. Now you can do a risk of harm analysis in many instances. That could actually save you, say, like $5 to $10 grand depending upon what your retention deductible is in your cyber policy. Because now you can go through and you can say, okay, let's do this investigation in-house. Let's play by the rules, right? Let's make sure we document everything. Was there any weird outflow? How long do we think that this password has been out there? And in certain circumstances, you could just say, okay, well, we did our risk of harm analysis. It looks like nothing went out the door. Nothing came in the door that wasn't supposed to be here. We changed the password. We documented it. Now you don't have to call me. Now we don't have to get the insurance company involved. We don't have to deal with forensics. We don't have to pay retentions and deductibles. It's not a mark on your record. It's easier for everybody. I think it's highly underutilized. It's super cheap, really useful, something every firm should really take a hard look at.
Awesome, Joe. Awesome. Those are some great tips there. I think one of the most important things I taken away from that, especially now during this COVID-19 crisis, is employee training is key. Got this disrupted workforce, this now virtual workforce. In the next 30 days, do an employee training around cybersecurity best practices.
Yeah, so according to the FTC, employee training, if you actually dig into the references, it has to be continuous and ongoing. So I think that kind of the best learning research out there has said that if you teach somebody something, right, within 30 days, they're going to forget all of it. And we see that in the martial arts world all the time. So, it's something where if management makes it a priority, the employees will make it a priority. If it's kind of this ad hoc, guy comes in the room every 30 days, and he sounds really bored, and he's like, don't click on the wrong thing. It's obviously not a priority for management. It's not going to be a priority for the employees. And that's when people end up calling me.
So do training.
Yeah, just make sure people understand what the threats are. And just at the very least, hey, something doesn't feel right. We have a new account number we're supposed to transfer $1 million to. Maybe we should call that person their prearranged number first and just validate that. Yeah. I mean, it's super basic, but you'd be shocked how many cyber insurance claims I deal with where it was something really basic. We dropped the ball. Now we're calling Joe, and it turns into kind of a big ordeal.
And that's kind of one of the big takeaways for this for everybody. Most cyber hacks and breaches are not super, super complicated. They're all simple things that they exploit from others. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. If you got questions on this, reach out to us. We're happy to help. Joe's happy to geek out on cyber insurance anytime. So to stay up to date, click the link, subscribe to the YouTube channel, get the knowledge you need, and take action today to change the world and invest in yourself.